Hi, and welcome back to MQW Driving School YouTube channel. If you're new here, my name is Mia Qasim. I'm ORDIT trainer. I'm based in Leeds. Today we are going to look into the three very important areas where the PDI failed the driving test, known as three core competencies. Number one, fault identification. Number two, analyze of fault. Number three, remedy of that fault. These three core competencies are connected to each other. And if you master this simple step of three core competencies, then your chances to pass ADI Part 3 test are higher. So the main key is keep three core competencies with you. Number one, identification of fault. Number two, analyze of that fault with your client. Number three, give remedy, but let the remedy come out from your client mouth. Don't give remedy directly. So let's break it down and discuss this in more detail. Number one, fault identification. That is the first competency which you should be a master of. Fault identification. To get master of this one, try to use DL25 form, which is the learner driving test marking sheet. So you can understand how to identify the client fault. I can see many PDI able to find the clients or pupil major fault, like dangerous fault, serious fault, but they are unable to recognize their weakness and minor faults. Or sometimes the PDI think the weakness and the minor fault is nothing to do in the test, and they're only looking for the major problem in the client, like hitting the tire to the curb, or approaching the roundabout too fast, or stalling the car. So these kind of problem they pick it very easily. But when the client do a minor mistakes, or when the client shows some weakness in his performance, they did not take this in account, and they don't think this is a fault. And when they don't think it's a fault, they never think they have to adopt the lesson about it. And when they don't adopt the lesson, that is where PDI failed the Part 3 test more, not adopting the lesson. Now, fault identification. This means you need to recognize when your pupil has made a mistake, any driving fault, minor, major, serious, or developing a weakness which is going to lead you to the problem, like 1 minor, 2 minor, 3 minor can become serious. Same like a DL25 phone the examiner used in the driving test. You need to think in the same way. Today I seen one minor, one weakness, then other. Now is leading me towards the serious, like a marking sheet. So think that way. Stop the client from the weakness, from the minor. Don't let them go into the serious and dangerous fault. So don't just look for what just happened as a major fault. You need to understand what the pupil is actually doing, body language. That is where we use the ramp. Look road ahead, watch your mirrors, watch your pupil action. In risk management, this is the line number 3. The pupil should be watched by the trainer. The trainer must be aware of the surrounding and the pupil action. That is where you pick the faults. So that is where in risk management, trainer should be aware of the surrounding and people pick the pupil faults, pick the pupil actions, so he can recognize the pupil weakness, and that is where he's going to use the analyzation and remedy after that. So for example, imagine your pupil approaching a junction and emerge too quickly. Maybe that fault you can find is so easily because you're teaching them every day. You can tell approaching too quickly is a risk, but not every fault you can pick it easily. So once you know how to do the danger serious, now focus on everyday lesson, weakness and minor. So let's say you see the driver approaching to the junction too quickly and you think, oh, that is a fault. Yes, if the examiner is going to see them doing in the learner driving test, they will pick this as an approaching speed fault at the junction observation. Yes, it's a fault, so you pick it. So once you pick it, the job is not done yet. Technically, this process actually starting from now onward. But that is the only beginning. That is how it's starting. You need to identify exactly what happened. Go deep, dig down. And how are you going to do this? By questioning. Ask or think. Did they fail to observe properly? That is the reason. Is your client misjudged the speed of the approaching traffic? Is your client was looking in the wrong place at the junction? Is your client trying to move off without sufficient observation or information from the new road? Is your client is distracted because maybe you're talking too much, or maybe you're giving too much instructions at the junction? Or your client have the lack of information, or your client have a lack of experience. The fault itself, which is approaching speed faster, approaching to the junction quickly, the fault itself is the symptom. But what causing them behind it, that is the main thing we have to pick. The reason, right reason behind it. Your job as a PDI, as an instructor, is to find out what is underlying this problem, where this problem actually started. It started because the client is not doing something properly. For example, don't say to the client, "Oh, you're so quick to the junction, please don't do it next time." Don't just pinpoint the fault. That is the beginning to start finding why the fault, why this fault actually happened. Maybe you know the client ability and experience from the last lesson that your client is always do this mistake. You maybe know this client have no ability and experience to deal this junction alone independently. He always need my help, but today I take the help away. That is why he done it. So maybe you already know the reasons. So that is your duty. So now we're going to move on to the next one. Analyzation of the fault. That is where we go one step deeper down, dig down. Why? Why it happened? Once you identify the fault, that is not your duty only in your part 3 test. That is a beginning. Remember that. That's a beginning. These are 3 core competencies. This is the first thing you've seen it. Now you have to go in the simple process. So once you identify the fault, ask yourself, why did it happen? First feel you the one who's driving the car and you done this mistake. Ask from yourself, why did it happen? Let's use an example. The pupil approaches the junction and emerges when it is not even safe to do so. You could simply say, you shouldn't have gone there yet. Asking the client or telling the client, why you go from there? Or you're telling the client, you should have gone from here. But that doesn't mean you are analyzing the fault or asking the client, why you go from there? Why you decided to go? That simple one question does not mean you doing a analyzation. That is still you are on the top. You're not going down. But that does not analyze itself. Instead, you should or could ask the client, what did you see before you moved? Now the client can give you any answers. You people might say, I saw the car, but I thought I had enough time to go. Now you have more information from the client point of view. Because when you see something, maybe the client have a different perspective, image. He may be thinking differently. Maybe he have different information from different instructors or from internet. So maybe he tried his own way to do it, which don't match with your instructions. So we have to ask them. The problem may be not the lack of observation he did on the junction. The people may have observed the vehicle coming, but he misjudged the speed and the distance. Or maybe he misjudge. The car is coming from the right, is coming down the hill, maybe approaching too faster than he think or the client think. That is called analysis, analyzation. You are finding out now why this mistake actually happened. Ask question from your client. One of the most powerful tool during the ADI Part 3 test is effective questioning. Question can be for many reasons. To check the knowledge, to analyze, to encourage, for many reasons. Instead of immediately giving the pupil answer, oh, do this next time, don't do this again please. Encourage them to analyze their own performance. That is again your one of the 17 competencies in ADI Part 3 test. The trainer should encourage the pupil to analyze the problem and take responsibility for their learning. So you must do it. That is in teaching line number 2. That you must encourage them to analyze. That is where you get the number for analyzation in the 3 core competencies. After the fault picking, analyzation. For example, question, for example, what happened there? What did you notice at the junction? What information did you use to make that decision? What made you decide it is safe to go? Looking back, that junction which we did that mistake, what could you have done differently? Can you please tell me? So these kind of questions is encouraging the client to think, and that is your 17 competencies. Encourage your client to analyze, which means encourage your client to think and encourage your client to take the responsibility for their learning. And that is important because you are not simply correcting the pupil. Correcting is so simple. If I do the mistake now and you see my mistake, we stop the car, you tell me don't do this next time, maybe I will not do it. If I do something just now at this junction and you tell me to do the next junction, turn left, I will not do that mistake because you just told me don't do it now. I'm taking your command. But tomorrow I will forget again. That is why telling is not a right thing. You do question to analyze, to let them think. You encourage to take responsibility. That is how they will learn today. Keep it for tomorrow, for the lifetime. You are here to help them understand their own fault so they don't do it again the lifetime. Now let's talk about the remedy of the fault. Once you have identified in the 3 core competencies, identification, analyzation. Now third number, remedy. Once you have identified and analyzed the fault with your client together, you need to do something about it. You have to sort it now. See, say, sort. Now you have to sort it. That's another way of saying the 3 core competencies. See means picking the fault. Say means analyze. Now sort means remedy. Fault, analyze, remedy. See, say, sort. Now once you identified and analyzed the fault, you need to do something about it. That is a remedy. Solution. The remedy should address the cause of the problem, not just the symptom. So once you analyze the real problem, now the remedy should be for the real problem. So for example, your pupil repeatedly emerged too quickly from the junction. You analyze the problem and discover that they are struggling to judge the speed on approaching the vehicle or misjudging the speed of approaching vehicles. So the remedy shouldn't be simply look more carefully. No, that is not the solution. That is maybe just a task. Just look more, but what after looking? That is the main thing. After looking, judge. That is very vague. It's not too clear remedy. It's just telling somebody to do this next time. No, that is not the solution. You have to cut the roots of the problem. That is why they say that is not the solution. Okay. Instead, you could create an exercise that allow the pupil to practice observation, more assessment, more decision making power. You might move to a suitable area. So let's say your client did this in the challenging area, challenging junction or the busy junction. You must move back to a little bit quiet suitable area where the pupil can practice judging the approaching traffic with an appropriate help or support from your side. If the client can't do this independently, you must change your spot. Now come one level down to prompting or maybe a little bit guidance. Then gradually reduce your assistance if they start doing it better. As the client starts showing the good skills or skills improved, now he can judge the speed and distance. Then you stop giving them the help or support. Let them make more independent again. That is we called an effective remedy. Now let's talk about the complete process. So let's put everything together. Imagine your pupil approaches the roundabout and select the wrong lane. So step number 1, you identify. You recognize the fault, wrong lane. Your pupil has selected the incorrect lane. You pick that fault. Step 2, analyze that fault now. You investigate it, deep digging. Why? Why it happened? You might ask your client or pupil, what information did you use when choosing that lane or your lane? The pupil say, for example, I wasn't sure which direction I need to go. Now you discovered after talking to each other, question, answer, question, answer. Now you discovered that the issue may be the planning and understanding of the road marking rather than simply poor steering or lane discipline. So sometimes what you see is not the fault, what is underlying which cause it, that is the fault, and that is where you have to adopt. If you adopt at the wrong chapter, then there is no point of adopting. Okay, so first understand the cause of the fault. Now number 3 step, remedy. Now you can create the suitable learning activity, which means practice. Once you figure out is a fault, technically the time to adopt the lesson, and that means a new goal. A new goal need a new solution, new remedy. New remedy, new practice. Now you can create suitable learning activity. You could use question answer technique, start teaching the road sign discussion by the opening the highway code book, traffic sign book, make a new route planning where you can plan early, demonstrate how to do it by the books, by the pen and paper, guide practice, go back again, smaller areas, a little bit less busy area, do under your guidance, talk through, and then make them independent again with your practice. Then you reassess your client performance, current ability, current experience, current ability. Then you structure the next 5 minutes according to it, next plan about it. Now the main thing is, don't just correct the pupil. That is one of the biggest mistake the PDI do in their test. Pupil makes a mistake, fault identification. The instructor says, you need to check your mirrors. That is just telling. You're just saying something to your client to do next time. That is not count under the 3 core competencies. That is not client-centered approach. That is clearly telling somebody to do next time because they are in your car. They may be already nervous because of the third person. They might will not do the next time. But that does not mean you adopted the lesson. Still, that is just a telling. So let's repeat. The pupil makes a mistake. The instructor says, you need to check your mirrors. The pupil continue driving, then makes the same mistake again. Why? Ask yourself, why? I just told my client, check your mirrors. Make sure, check your mirrors. Then why? Why he done it again? because the instructor corrected the fault but did not necessarily identify the cause. That means there is no analyzation after the fault. You see the fault, you told your client, don't do this next time. But there is no analyzation of the cause, no deep digging evidence. Instead, you should investigate and ask, talk me through what you were thinking before you changed the direction. Like ask his routine. Remember, the question have the reasons. This time your question have a reason to check his knowledge before he do something, before he go into the risk management and fall down in some problem. The people might say, I completely forget about the mirrors because, now listen carefully, because I was concentrating on the junction. Because you told me, as a PDI, you told me careful about your cars coming from your right. Now I'm focusing on the cars more. I'm thinking about the junction more because you told me to do this. Now I forget about the other task. I can't do multitask. I forgot about the mirrors. Now you have learned something important. The pupil may have a workload from your side or he have a planning issue. So examiner will say, you the one who's telling you to do something, now he's taking a pressure. He's thinking of one task which you told him don't do next time. He's trying to keep your words as a main task and full mind he's doing that task. Now he's not doing the mistake of the junction, but he created the new fault. That is the problem. Your remedy can now be designed around that problem. Mirror and junction, observation, all around it. You have to adopt your style. You need to make a new structure for your client. In your lesson, teaching and learning strategy, adopt your teaching style with the client teaching style and current ability. Now your client is showing you his current ability is reducing. He can't do multitasking. So you must adopt your lesson, must change your teaching, adopt your teaching, adopt your lesson. But first, find the cause. The remedy must be appropriately. Remember, there isn't it always the one single remedy which apply to every client. Like I said, teaching style suit with the learner style. So you can't use the same technique you use for 100 student. Maybe this 101 student need a different style. You can't apply the same style. Sometimes the PDI only know how to do through the books. They can't adopt their teaching with every different clients. Your clients are different every day. So your teaching can be different every day. Your style can be different. Your way out can be different. Your remedy should depend on the pupil, how they are, who they are, age, adult, child, age, disability, any reason. First, the client as the center, then the fault, then the cause, then circumstances which created that fault on the day, on the time. For one pupil, demonstration may work, but it don't gonna work for everybody. For another people, maybe the question answer is the better option. For the client, maybe using the pen and paper and explaining them is better. For the client, he say, let's swap the seat, let me show you how you do it. Different style for different clients. Another people might be benefit from repeating the same junction again under your guidance or under your prompting. That is where the client center approach is more important. Never use one style for everybody, or don't impose your style to your client where you clearly can see it did not work in the last junction. So never use the same technique again in the next junction. Try to adopt it. That is also where the adoption comes. So think about it. Now think this way. What if the pupil improves after the practice, after your explanation, after your opportunities example used to clear his learning outcome? Now his current ability improve after the practice, after the Q&A. That is another important area, part 3, important point. You have identified the fault. You have analyzed it. You have provided the remedy to the client. So 3 core competencies complete. And now the pupils show the improvement after the practice of the same mistake area or similar. What will you do? Or what do you do here? Don't just keep the same level of help. If you was doing the guidance, don't just keep doing guidance. Change your level. Guidance to prompting, prompting to independent. Change it. Reduce your spot. Don't help them too much. Otherwise, you are not making the client skilled for the lifetime. That is not client-centered approach. So for example, initially, check your mirror before you change your direction. Then later, prompting, what do you need to consider before changing direction? Then, eventually, when they start improving, showing you improvement, let the pupil identify the requirement independently for changing lane. Guidance, prompting, independent. Always notice your client and keep adopting your spot. That is also classed as, did the trainer identify the goal and need? Did the trainer agree the lesson structure according to the client ability and experience? Did the trainer adopted the new suitable area or change the suitable area? And did the trainer adopt the lesson according to the client to give the client help to achieve his main goal and need? Now you are moving from instructor sport to the sharing responsibility like guidance, sharing responsibility, prompting, and then towards pupil independent. That is called progression, step by step. And this will come when the client fall down after you see the fault. That is how the process go on and on and on. Now, what if the remedy doesn't work? In the last one, we're talking about positive way. Is work. It worked. So now you change the sport. Going upward adoption. Staircasing, going upward. All working fine. But now think opposite way. What if the remedy doesn't work? That is where adoption comes in again. Don't just keep repeating the same exercise, like same junction again and again, if it's clearly not working. Again, adopt the area, change the area, adopt the style, adopt the sport, and ask yourself, why is not working? Why isn't the pupil improving? Maybe, many reasons, maybe the task is too difficult for your client, current ability, experience. The explanation you gave to me as a remedy wasn't that clear. That's why I'm still doing the same mistake. The pupil still lack of prerequisite knowledge, or the maybe environment is inappropriate, or excuse me, or your pupil is overloaded with your instructions, guidance, or maybe the teaching strategy you're using or style you're using is not suitable for your client. And I can see as an examiner clearly evidence about it. And you keep on doing it. You're repeating the same what you know. You're not happy to adopt because you don't know how to adopt. Adopting is not just pick the fault. Remember, adopting is not in the part 3 to pick the fault and change the lesson, giving the different topic or different theme. This is where I see the many PDI do that fault. They start teaching the client a large roundabout and the client do the fault, and they come back to the mini roundabout and they think they adopt it. No, that is changing the area only. Adopted the area, not the lesson. So adopting is many things. Many things come under the heading of adoption. Let's say you adopt it. So you adopt it. But remember, identify the fault, analyze the fault, come with the remedy, then reassess and then check is that remedy is working or is not working. That is also classed as adoption on other level. You change the level, but it's not working. Change another level, reassess it. Again, you can call it adoption on adoption. You did adopt it, but it's not working. Don't stick with it. Adopt another adopt. Now I'm going to give you the ADI Part 3 test example. Let's imagine you are teaching approaching and emerging at the junction. That's your topic and theme. The pupil make the mistake. You identify it. Pupil moved off, like talking about the mistake. Pupil moved off when the approaching vehicle was too close. So you identify it. So that is like a very easy to identify mistake. That is why you identify it. Now you have to analyze it. The pupil saw the vehicle but understand or did not understand its speed. Now you create the remedy. You need to develop the new structure to create this fault, new structure. You move to the suitable area, like you change this junction, going to the different junctions, changing the suitable area. Maybe this is beyond my experience, beyond my capacity. So you change the area for your client, and then you start practicing into the different area, the easy one, assessing the approaching speed of the traffic. Then you use questions with your client. What can you see? What are you looking for in the junction? What could make you wait here? The car. When would you decide it's safe to go? Let the client encourage to think. The people start to improve after your question, after your changing the area, like less busy junction, and with your question he start understanding what things, like a checklist, he need to do at the junction. You gradually reduce your help. Let's say the client was independent, client did the mistake, you've changed the level of help to prompting. Now gradually you reduce your prompting, make him back to independent. Then you reassess the pupil, reassess the client ability and experience in a more challenging situation or more challenging junction. That demonstrate a complete teaching cycle. You are flexible. You are adopting your lesson. How the client is showing you up. That is the whole process of the 3 core competencies. Pick the fault, analyze it, deep digging, question answer technique, changing the area, making him less busy for him, easy for him, use question to help him to kill the cause, what happened on the junction, and get it sorted, and then move on back where he was before, what level he was before. So that is the process, the cycle you have to show to the examiner. Now let's talk about the golden rule behind the whole process, the cycle. If you remember nothing else from this video, for example, you should remember, but let's say you forget everything, then remember this. Don't just ask, what did the pupil do wrong? But ask them, why? Why did it happen? The reason behind it. Then ask, what can I do to help you to improve the client? That is the difference between the simple correcting the driver or teaching the driver. So minus that telling from your dictionary. Asking. Tell, ask. Keep the ask in your dictionary, not the telling. Tell don't help the client for the lifetime. Ask, question, answer. Now let's do the quick recap what we have learned so far from 3 core competencies: fault, analyze, and remedy. Quick recap. So the 3 core competencies are repeat, fault, analyze, the remedy. Number 1, fault identification. What happened? Recognizing the driving fault or learning need or driver weakness and minor fault. Number 2, analyzing of the fault. Why did it happen? Investigate, deep dig. Investigate the actual underlying cause, problem behind why it happened. Then number 3, remedy of the fault. What are you going to do about it? See, say, sort. Choose an appropriate teaching strategy. Change your teaching style. Change your structure. Change your teaching area. Choose an appropriate teaching style, strategy, teaching learning activity. And then, after the practice of the same fault at the same junction or similar junction, then do not forget to reassess the client level. Scaling, new scaling you can call it. Reassess. Has the pupil improved? Yes or no? So you can adopt upward or you adopt downwards, like staircasing going upward or staircasing going downward. If you say yes, then progression or progress the lesson. Go forward, go upward, improve it. Continue with the old lesson, old theme after the fault is sorted. If not, adopt it again. Adopt your approach, teaching style. Now, this is my final message to every PDI or all the person who's doing ADI, standard check test or PDI part 3 test. Remember, the ADI part 3 test, isn't it about catching your client mistake or picking the client fault? Job don't finish here. Job start from here. It's about showing the examiner that you can recognize, you can understand, and you can respond to those mistakes professionally with different styles. So when your pupil make the fault, think, identify it, analyze it, and then offer the remedy or let the client think of his own remedy first, and then reassess after the practice, is this fault sorted, yes or no? So should we go back to the old lesson or we adopt it again, change the level structure again? That is how you turn the mistake into the learning opportunity, and that is what you can show the examiner in your ADI Part 3 test, 17 competencies, that I'm picking the fault, I'm correcting the fault in my lesson. That is your learning curve, and that is the best place where you can get a lot of numbers in your 17 competencies. So if you're preparing for your ADI Part 3 test, make sure you subscribe to my channel for more ADI tips and more ADI training videos. You can do the mock test with me as well for ADI Part 3 test. I also have mock test videos as well, or sample videos as well, which can help you for your ADI Part 3 training. So thank you guys. Thank you for watching. I'll see you soon again for the next video. Till then, thank you. Bye.